Everybody, my name is Peter Vexelman. I am actually sitting down at my in-town place overlooking this tonight. I was just on a phone or just talking before we went live here to Rafa and said what an amazing place to be at. Just an amazing view. Right below where I'm at is a bike trail. Really, it's a bike trail, walking trail, scooter trail, jogging trail. I mean, just amazing. It's like it literally winds through the city of Atlanta for 23 miles. I mean, I'm literally overlooking it, so I can come downstairs from where I'm at, which I do a lot, and pop over to that trail. And it's like it literally winds through Atlanta. If you just imagine this major trail that is lined with flowers and trees and bushes and total greenery. Like when you're walking it, you think you're like in a park somewhere, but really where you are is you're like in a major metropolitan city. And what that trail does is it literally connects probably about 30 neighborhoods as it winds 23 miles throughout Atlanta. And that's where I'm hanging out today and tonight. And I was actually on that trail down there for about 3 or 4 hours today, just talking to our partners, talking deals. It was exciting. You know, one of the deals I was talking about, Rafa just brought up to me. We had one of our partners go under contract, put a property under contract today. We decided to wholesale it, and boom, got a contract on it the very first day. I had another partner just call me, or actually just texted me about 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, and he said, "Hey, we're having a pretty good week here together." I said, "Oh, yeah, what's up?" He goes, "We've just put 6 properties under contract." I'm like, "It's not a bad little week." So it's exciting. So if you guys hear kind of background noise, it's because on this side, you got this unbelievable trail. On this side, you got a road. I mean, I'm in the city, but I think it's cool to do. I love doing them from here, from the patio. It's just like fresh air and all this. We got a lot of people dialing in today. We got Anthony, we got Elise, we got Roland, we got Corey, we got John and John, we got Kevin, we got Jamari. I'm so excited to read people's names off because this is like I've only learned how to use the system like literally in the last couple of weeks. Up to this point, I didn't even know how to use this. We got Tom, we got Wayne, we got Maxine, we got Martin, we got Linda, we got another Linda, we got Nicole. Really cool. We'll just give it a second and then we'll get rolling. If you guys don't mind, tell me where you guys are dialing in from. And let me know what part of town. I always think everybody's like in my world. But what part of the country you're in? But I guess the country is our world now in essence. So let me know where you're dialing in from and what you. Hopefully, I'm going to show it to you one more time just because so many people have dialed in the last couple of minutes. This is my view tonight. Unbelievable, isn't it? Gorgeous skies. As a matter of fact, when we're done talking tonight, I'm going to head down there again. This is where I'm probably going to end up doing dinner. Oh, yeah, and that belt line, it is like lined. And when I say lined, I mean lined with bars, clubs, restaurants, gyms. There's a couple cigar bars. There's literally huge malls on it. I mean, they're the kind of malls that, like, if you live somewhere, you would, like, drive as a destination to this mall. And along this belt line down there, they just stand there like these huge buildings by themselves. Just absolutely incredible. So I appreciate y'all dialing in. I hope you guys are having an unbelievable night the way I am. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope things are going well from wherever you are. Like I said, I always kind of start these. I always put dogs down there. I always start out these Tuesday night webinars in the same way, and I just want to tell you why we do what we do here, why we do these webinars, and what's in it for us, what we hope is in it for you guys, and what it's all about in terms of um, these 30 or 40-minute long sessions. There's really two reasons we do it. Number one is for those of you that are not quite part of our world, but maybe you're checking us out, maybe you're seeing what it is we're about. You may actually be out there yourself, hustling, putting deals together, um, closing on deals. Maybe, well, I know if you're doing anything, you're definitely struggling, because we all struggle in this business. That's like the one thing that this business has in common, and um, is that but we want to help those of you that are going through that, and we want to be part of your real estate experience. We want to add value by showing you stuff and teaching you stuff and educating you, and really giving you hope that this business is worthy. No matter where you are in the process, no matter where you are in the cycle, it's worthy to keep on battling, keep on doing things, you know, keep on going through whatever it is you're going through to make sure that you get to be successful. So that's one reason we do it. And honestly, I hope that those of you that are out there doing this to yourself, and you keep on kind of checking us out and going through the process with us. I do hope deep and down inside that sooner or later you will join us, because I'll tell you from my personal experience of 20 years in this business, of doing things that guys, my daughter's called me like 10 times in a row. I gotta make sure nothing's wrong. Emma, is everything okay? Okay, can I call you back? I'm on a webinar. Okay, but everything's good? Okay, I'll call you back. Thanks. See, this is what happens when you do things live, right? Things pop up. So that was my daughter. She's in college, actually heading home. I'm just gonna make sure everything is okay. But after doing this for 20 years and doing this business all kinds of ways, I've done it before with certain models, certain techniques, certain strategies, and I've done it by myself as a lone ranger. I've done it with a big corporation around me, meaning a lot of people, a lot of employees. And those of you that know anything about what we do now, now that my whole model is through partners. I will tell you, those of you that are at it yourself, but you still keep on coming back, I hope sooner or later you come to realization that this business is really designed. I really do think it's designed to be built from a standpoint of a partnership. I think this business lends itself in such a way that when you partner, especially if you're at a certain level and you want to get to the next level, in my opinion, there's no better opportunity than to do it through partnerships. And so, again, for those of you that are out there kind of making things happen, going at it alone, we hope sooner or later you will decide to come into our world. And we do hope that sooner or later we could possibly start doing some real estate deals with you, okay? The second reason we do these Tuesday night webinars is there are some of y'all that are just like you are. You know that this is the business you want to be in. You've come to a conclusion you can't do it yourself. And by the way, that conclusion usually comes from one of two areas. You're either not experienced enough, or you don't have the money. And so, if you, and a lot of people don't have both. So a lot of people don't have experience and money, or you might not have one or the other. And you're already at the point where you're like, okay, I need help. I got to do this from a standpoint of I got to kind of piggyback off someone else. And that's the second reason we do these Tuesday night webinars, is for those of you that already have come to a conclusion that you want to do this with someone else, we hope sincerely that we're the ones that you want to do it with, because that is how we currently do our deals. Okay, I'm no longer a lone ranger. I'm no longer an investor that basically finds a deal and does a deal. I'm an investor now that partners with individuals all over the United States and does deals with them. And I think it's a great scenario for myself, because I want to do more deals. And the more partners I have, it gives me the more ability to do more deals. But more importantly, I will tell you, I think it's an even better scenario for our partners that we have all over the United States, because those partners have the ability to really leverage and piggyback off everything that we've created here for the last 20 some years. You have the ability to leverage from the standpoint of my knowledge and all of our team's knowledge. You have the ability to leverage from a standpoint of marketing, because we handle a lot of marketing for you. You leverage from a standpoint that you use my money to buy the properties, you use my money to fix them. And then when we sell them off, however we sell them, we split the profits 50-50. And that's the second reason why we do these Tuesday night webinars, is for those of you that are at the point where you're like, man, I know I need something like that. Who do I do it with? I want to raise my hand and say, I want you to do it with me, because we are geared for it. We're set up for it. We've been doing it for a while now. We are running on all the cylinders. We're getting better and better and better at it. And I really do think that for those of you that do want to leverage and through other people, by standing on other people's shoulders, that we are literally the best opportunity out there. So if anywhere during the webinar tonight or right afterwards, you're like, yeah, that makes sense to partner with someone that's done, thousands of deals, and that's going to put up the money, is going to put up experience, put up his know-how. If for those of you that are like, yeah, that makes all the sense, then somewhere along the line, either tonight, while you're listening to me, or right when done, we want you to head over to our website at www.coachingbypeter.com. There you can get more information about who we are, what we do, and how we partner. And if it seems like even after going there, you're like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for, then we simply want you to put your information there, and we'll touch base with you and kind of have a quick powwow. And if it's the right fit, we're going to be off and running and put together deals very, very quickly. All right, so that's kind of off with the basics, off with all the preliminaries for tonight. Now I want to get into the topic of tonight. And basically the topic of tonight is a topic that if you're in this business, you're not going to be able to escape. You may be able to escape doing rehab. In 20 years in this business, I've never touched a project from a rehab perspective. You may be able to escape in this business, the ability to understand how titles work. After doing this for 20 some years, I don't think I understand title work. Don't want to understand title work. Never research titles. Understand conceptually what they are, but it's not going to make me money. Never really even sold my own properties. I've escaped that. But the topic that we are going to discuss today is a topic that if you have any ambition to be in this business, whether it's for a short period of time, a medium amount of time, or an extraordinary long period of time, this is the topic that you're going to be confronted with constantly. And it's a topic that we talk about, I think on a consistent basis, but I think it's a topic that needs to be continuously talked about. And that is this: how do we, as investors, work with sellers? I mean, think about it. Has there ever been a deal done without a seller in it? There's deals done that haven't been rehabbed. There's been deals done that haven't needed closing attorneys or closing agents. There's been deals done that haven't maybe even needed to be sold on the back end because you're renting them out. There's been deals done that have not had like these essential parts of the real estate business. But I promise you, there's never, ever been a deal done in real estate that has not had some kind of a seller involved. So talking with, communicating with sellers is an extraordinarily important topic. It's something that you as an individual are always going to be faced with. How to communicate with them, how to deal with them, what to say to them, what not to say with them. This is where negotiations come in. It's where follow-ups come in. I mean, really, if you think about it, every aspect of the front end of the sale, which is, if you think about it, the marketing piece, everything has to do with sellers, right? How do you market to these sellers? What do you market to these sellers? Again, what do you say? What do you not to say? So I want to kind of bounce between things here as it relates to sellers, because there's so many things that relate to sellers in this business. But I want to give you enough value today to be able to extract that and be able to focus in on some things as it relates to sellers, and then for you to be able to take some very distinct action steps as it relates to sellers, okay? The first thing I want to talk to you about sellers is kind of an obvious thing to me, but it's amazing how the longer I'm in this business, the more I realize how unobvious, I don't know if that's a word, how not obvious it is to individuals. But that is this: where are you the most effective with a seller? Because if you think about it, when you're dealing with sellers, there's different ways to deal with sellers. There's different ways of communicating with sellers. My point being very simple. Especially the newer you are the closer you are to that seller in terms of proximity when you're communicating with them, the more effective you're going to be. What I mean by that is this: get in front of the seller. One of the biggest mistakes I see investors make, especially in the beginning levels, is they try to utilize this way too much when it comes to sellers, and that's your cell phone. And it's for obvious reasons. It's quicker, right? You get a seller on the phone. It's amazing how many times people think, well, gosh, I got him on the phone. Let me go ahead and negotiate right on the phone. The only time, in my opinion, well, there's a couple times where you should not be face-to-face with a seller when you're negotiating is either A, when you're dealing with an absentee seller, maybe an out-of-state seller. Obviously, I'm not saying, fly across country every time you talk to a seller. So that's understandable. And the second time that you may consider not having to be in front of a seller is when you get at higher levels, kind of towards my kind of level. I've been doing this for so many years, 20-some years. I've negotiated tens of thousands of deals, okay? Or I've gone through negotiations tens of thousands of times. I will sometimes shortcut the system by utilizing the phone. But that only comes with experience. The bottom line is this: you'll have a lot more impact. You'll have a lot more authority. You'll have a lot more ability. You'll have a lot more successes when you communicate with a seller in a one-to-one environment. And the best type of an environment to be within a seller is inside their own kitchen table. So let's kind of break this down. Why would you rather do this face-to-face than on the phone, let's say, okay? Because remember, when you're dealing with sellers, really what you're doing, you're not there to hang out, right? Nobody's ever going to go, you're not going to a seller to have tea and coffee, right? You're going to a seller to do negotiations. And the reason you're going to be a lot more effective and actually efficient and get better deals when you're sitting down with that seller face-to-face is for one very basic reason. You can see the seller's emotion when you're sitting down with them face-to-face. And negotiations, the more advanced you get, and we're going to hit a little bit of negotiations today too, but the more advanced you get at negotiations, the better you get in negotiations, the more you're going to realize that really negotiations, it's a very, you have to be able to read the seller's emotion. The reason I feel that I'm such a good negotiator is that I have learned that negotiations, it's understanding how to put your seller into certain emotional states, and how when you put them into those emotional states, how to correctly work and structure your conversations, that negotiation really just becomes a very simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-step process. And so when I'm sitting with that person face to face, I could see their emotion. When I'm sitting and talking on a phone with that seller, I have no ability to know what kind of emotions they are doing, okay? So you got to be with them face to face whenever possible. As a matter of fact, I tell people, especially in the beginning, a lot of times people will ask me, beginners will ask us, like, okay, what do I do when I get that seller on the phone initially? I'm so confused, I'm so overwhelmed. And I tell people, simple: get inside their house. That's it. Your number one goal when you're dealing with a seller on that initial call, it might be a call in from a sign, a direct mail piece, it could be driving for dollars, whatever it is. Any time a seller, you're talking to a seller, the number one thing you should do in the beginning is get in the door, okay? And by the way, the other thing that you will see It's a lot easier when you're dealing with somebody face to face to negotiate deals than when you're dealing with somebody on a phone. Because here, let me tell you something that happens on a phone that's not going to happen face to face. Negotiations is a process, right? And it could get emotional. We already talked about it being an emotional process. And let's face it, sometimes they go a little sideways. I mean, there ain't no perfect negotiations that's like totally vanilla. Many, many times they go sideways. Well, let me tell you what happens when a conversation goes sideways and you're dealing with this. This is what happens. The seller says something like this. Hey, Pete, I got another call coming in. Let me call you. Hey, Pete, I didn't realize what time it is. I got to run to an appointment. Hey, Pete, I got somebody in a doorbell. I got to run. So one of the biggest reasons why you want to be face-to-face is this phone gives people the ability to bail. If they don't think the negotiations are going well, if they feel like maybe you're upping them, one-upping them, if they feel like they're being taken advantage of, whatever all these feelings that can conjure up in a negotiations. So a phone is really a very easy escape route. When you're dealing with them face-to-face, you eliminate that, okay? The other reason that you want to be with them face-to-face, outside of emotion, and the reason you want to be with them face-to-face, preferably in their house, that's when people let the guard down the most. I mean, think about it. When you let your guard, why do you invite people to your house? Okay, I mean that. I guarantee you feel a lot more comfortable at your personal kitchen table than you do in a boardroom, right? And so it's the ultimate place for people to feel comfortable, to be less stressed, because negotiations is a stressful thing. And really the other thing is they're a lot more giving in their own houses when they are in third party places. So that's the first thing. When you're dealing with sellers, make sure that you're dealing with them face to face whenever possible. The drop down to that is not a cell phone call. Okay, it's not a cell phone call. It's like maybe FaceTime, for those of you that have Apple products, or Skype for those of you that don't. Because at least then you could still see them, you could still see their emotions or non-emotions, and you could see how things work, okay? When I'm dealing with sellers, I tend to be all business, okay? And so a lot of times when people see me dealing with sellers, I know what I do is not 100% duplicatable, okay? But it works for me. It works for me. So I'm not going to change something that works for me. But I will tell you as a general rule, when you're dealing with sellers, the best thing you could do is build a friendship with them first, okay? Build a friendship. I mean, it is, again, because you're doing emotional things. You're doing high-end things. I mean, you're negotiating with sellers on really what is to them the most expensive thing they have. And let's face it, houses are the most expensive assets people have. And you're dealing with sellers on something that they have history with, okay? So it's very personal. And you're dealing with sellers that many times don't have experience doing what we do, meaning negotiate these things on a daily basis, right? So the more you could put them at ease, the better off you're going to be. And so even though I'm very kind of business-like, I'm pretty close, when I get into negotiation processes, when I deal with sellers, I kind of push, not necessarily push, but I move myself through the process pretty quickly. There is no question that when you're connecting with that seller initially, whether it's on a telephone because you're taking a call or you're making a call, or whether you've already made your way into their house, build a relationship with them. Find out a little bit about them. Find out about why they want to sell. Find out a little bit about their families. Find out about what they like, what they dislike. Just talk to them. And so many times when I talk about this, the question that is always asked of me is, well, Pete, how much time do I spend in building a relationship? And really, the real answer to that is there is no time limit on that. As long as the conversation, as long as you're hitting things off, As long as this conversation is going well, then you should spend whatever time is needed, is the bottom line. Whatever time is needed to keep on building out that relationship, okay? Let's remember, today we're talking about sellers, not necessarily in any particular order. I just want to give you as much tidbits and as much value as it relates to seller topics. Here's another thing that actually I talked about this to a number of people last week, and I know this next point resonated with a lot of people, and that is this. When you're dealing with sellers, at what point do you put things under contract? You know, that's a debate that has taken place in this industry for a very, very long time. You know, literally, at what point do you start locking things up? At what point do you start putting properties under contract? And my contention when it comes to that is very simple. When you're anywhere close to getting a deal done, but you're come to a stopping point, okay? And so to put some numbers on what I just said is this. If you're within about 15%, of where you ultimately have to be on the deal, then you should put it under contract, okay? So let's say the ultimate price, we've all decided, let's say you have to be at 100,000 to put this property under contract. If we get it for 100,000, we're doing a deal. I mean, we're going to make money, we're going to be happy and all this. If you're within, let's say 115,000 or better, tie the property up, put it under contract. You know, one of the biggest mistakes I see investors making over and over and over again is they think they need to have that perfect deal to get things under contract. Whereas sophisticated investors know that it's an art form. Negotiations, price reductions, it is an absolute art form. And what that means, it's a process. You know, and especially beginner investors make this mistake all the time. You know, they think, okay, well, if I got to, for this deal to make sense, I got to get it for 100,000. I got it to 105,000. I couldn't get it to 100,000, so now I'm going to bail. And my contention is no. That first negotiations that you're involved with the seller, that's just the beginning of the process. Guys, I could tell you from personal experience, from seeing my friends do this all over the nation, from seeing successful partners do this, negotiations literally takes place all the way till the closing table. And it's interesting, the more sophisticated the investor, the bigger the deal, the more experience there is in the room, the tougher and the longer these negotiations take, and the closer they get to closings. I could tell you, I've personally been part of closings. Where we're negotiating literally at the closing table. You know, I've seen people literally threaten not to show up at closings unless they got a certain price reduction. So if big time investors negotiate all the way till the closing table, then that should tell you that is exactly the philosophy you need to have. So the general rule of thumb, if you're within 15% or right about there of where you ultimately need to end up, you need to go ahead and tie that property up, and then we'll renegotiate it down the road. You know, I hear this pushback all the time. Well, gosh, Pete, that doesn't seem fair that, you know, you're putting under contract for 110,000 knowing you have to be at 100,000. Guys, that's what real estate is all about. I mean, think about this. Forget investors and forget you. Like, because that's really where your hang up is. You're thinking about you. Forget you, forget even the investor community. Think about the homeowner community, right? How many properties do you think go under contract just from homeowner to homeowner? Those are like the vanilla deals, right? They want full market value, they get full market value. I mean, it's about as basic as real estate gets, right? Why do you think people have inspection periods and contingency in those deals? Because almost everything, even on those easy vanilla homeowner to homeowner deal, almost everything goes through a renegotiation. Now, In the homeowner, the vanilla world, they're not called renegotiations. You know what they're called? They're called inspections and price reductions. That's what they're called in the regular homeowner deal. But almost every deal goes through that. Guess what? You send an inspector, which is what almost every homeowner to homeowner transaction involves. You send an inspector to one of those, that inspector is going to find something wrong with that house. And guess what happens when that inspector finds something wrong with that house? The buyer is going to submit an addendum, amendment to the contract. It's called an amendment to address concerns. And that concern, and that it's going to be of 20, 30 things that are wrong with the house. And in the end, the seller may end up fixing those things. But guess what? Fixing something is the same thing as doing a price reduction, right? Whether you spend your own money on fixing those things or whether you do a price reduction. So the bottom line is, do not be overly concerned from a standpoint of, well, gosh, it's not a perfect deal. It's okay. Get it tied up. See, what happens when you get properties tied up, a lot of things start working in your favor. That, there's points in the negotiations process. There's points in a process when you're dealing with sellers where you take huge leaps to give yourself an advantage. One of those huge leaps is at the point where you when you tie things up under contract. That's a huge win for you, even though you may not be able to get it at that price. It's a huge win for you because a couple things happen when you get things under contract. One, guess what you immediately do to your competition? You eliminate them. You immediately eliminate your competition, right? Because now you have it tied up under contract. So now that seller is singularly focused on you. Whereas before, when you're trying to put that perfect deal together, maybe the reason you aren't able to negotiate it to the lower enough price where you want to be is because you've got competition that you don't even know about that are making them certain offers. But guess what? Once you get property under contract, that's it. You eliminate your competition. The next thing that takes place when you get it under contract is you get the seller emotionally vested, or a lot more. They might be emotionally vested from day one, but you get them a lot more emotionally vested at that point. Because guess what starts happening to that seller in their mind when their property goes under contract? They start spending the money. They automatically, even though they're not telling you, they are spending the money. They got that new car in their mind all of a sudden. They got getting rid of debt in their mind all of a sudden. They got a down payment for their next property in their mind all of a sudden. So they get emotionally a lot more vested. And again, remember, we already discussed when you're dealing with sellers, it's an emotional transaction, right? And so when you get their emotions even higher during the negotiation process, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to maneuver that person. It's a lot easier than to get a renegotiations and stuff like that, okay? So that's the next tidbit is get things tied up. Another very important thing when dealing with sellers that so many investors lose, really this next thing, I don't think investors really lose it. I just don't think they even think about this. I mean, it's like when I talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, no kidding. And then I'm like, well, do you do it? And they're like, no, not really. And that is this. Who are you dealing with when you're dealing with sellers? Well, here's what I mean by that. Let's say a husband and a wife are on the contract together jointly, right? And now you're going through this whole process with, let's say, the husband. You've met the husband, you've negotiated with the husband, you built a relationship with the husband, you've done some price drops with the husband, you've taken time with the husband, and then all of a sudden it's time to get everything finalized. And you know what the husband's going to say? Well, let me check with my wife. And you're like, what? Yeah, because there's another decision maker involved. And one of the key mistakes investors make, especially in the beginning, is they deal with either the wrong decision maker or not with all the decision makers. And so think about this. Let's say you start, let me tell you how disastrous happen when people do this. You start negotiating. Let's say you start negotiating 150,000 and you successfully get that person down to 110,000. In your mind, you're like, man, fantastic. I got what I needed to get. I'm doing what I need to do. Everything is going well. You're patting yourself in the back. And then all of a sudden, another party gets introduced into this. So now, here's the problem with what you just created. Now you're basically forcing, let's say the husband or whoever you're dealing with, a partner, a business partner, whatever. You're basically forcing that person to now go and negotiate that deal on your behalf. That's not a smart thing. We've already established they're probably not very savvy negotiators. God knows you don't know what their relationship is with their spouse or their business partner. And their business partner may think it's 150. Now you got it to 110. You think that person is smart enough to negotiate with their partner or spouse? That no. So now what you're doing is you created a log jam. So one of the most important things that you could be doing when you're sitting down with sellers is you got to ask yourself, who is the decision maker here? Do you have a partner on this deal? Do you have a spouse in this deal? Do you have whoever it is there anyone else that has to make this decision? And when people say, yeah, I bought this with my business partner 10 years ago, I personally will not discuss anything further until that other person, even this is what will happen a lot of times. This is where, again, beginner investors lose it. This is what will happen. Oh, but I'm the decision maker. Really? And I used to fall for that. And I used to spend an enormous amount of time doing brilliant negotiations to never get deals. Because I was dealing with somebody that claimed to be the decision maker. They admitted they had partners, but they claimed to make the decisions. And inevitably, as soon as it was time to finalize something, oh, let me just run it by them. And it's like, well, I thought you're a decision maker. No, I am, but just out of courtesy, I want to do that. As soon as people tell me that, I know right away, I'm dead. This thing's falling apart. It's collapsing. We ain't going anywhere, okay? So that's another big tidbit when dealing with sellers. Always, always, always find out if there are other people on title, or not just on title, but also are there other people that will be helping them in this decision-making process. Very, very important, okay? A lot of times I'll also ask, does anything out, this is a big thing that helps me negotiate. I'll ask the question like this: does anything else have to take place for this deal to happen? Let me give you a specific example that just took place with one of our partners. They were negotiating this deal. Turned out to be a great deal. Turned out to be a great, they went through a process. I think it took them 3-4 weeks to negotiate it. It was ongoing. I know they were keeping my office in a loop, so I heard, this thing in the background about it. And then what happened? They got it tied up. I mean, they got it to a point where it was like, we agree. And all of a sudden the seller says this: now I have to find a place to move. And that place turned out to be like a cross country. So think about this. For 4 weeks, my partner was negotiating a deal that had no ability of being consummated because that seller had other things that had to take place for it to happen. In this case, it was a move. I mean, this would have been a no-brainer if had my partner realized that on day one. By the time they negotiated a month down the road, guess what would have done? We would have said, oh, you're moving to that state? Great. Let's start that process of finding you a property. See, to us as investors, like it's a no-brainer. Okay, if I got to move, I'm going to need to find a place. So I better start looking now. To like a regular seller, that doesn't make sense a lot of times. They think, well, I can't start looking for a place. I don't even have my place sold. To us, we realized that could be done at the same time. So we literally had my partner had literally wasted, not really wasted, because, hopefully this will happen a little bit down the road, but those 4 weeks could have been condensed and compressed had he asked the key question up front. Does anything else need to happen for this to happen? And let me tell you something, there's weird things that sometimes need to take place. Like I remember I had personally negotiated a deal went through good negotiations, got a favorable price, and then all of a sudden, at the last minute, my seller wouldn't sign. And I was like, well, we agreed, everything's cool, we're good to go, we're on the same page. And what that seller said, that if he sold in that calendar year, the way his taxes were working, he was going to get clobbered in taxes. And so he wanted to actually do the sale in the following year. Well, that would have been cool if it was like November and December, but it was like March. I mean, that was like an 8. I mean, had I asked that, I wouldn't have wasted all that time knowing this deal ain't happening for 8 months. And guess what? 30 other things can go wrong in that 8 months. It wouldn't have been, it would have been somebody I would have just put in a follow-up queue at best. So ask key questions like that. Who else has to make this decision? Who else is on title? Does anything need to happen for this deal to go through and to make sense? Okay. Give you another kind of quick tidbits on some negotiation strategies, because again, negotiations is linked into sellers, right? But here's one. With sellers, you have to learn when to talk, and with sellers, you also learn when not to talk. And I've seen this so many times. I've been part of these negotiations where I wasn't for some reason taking the lead, and I've seen, or I've been on the other side. People were negotiating with me, and I've seen this mistake. And what I call this mistake is this: talking your way into the deal and then successfully talking your way out of the deal. Talking your way into the deal and then talking your way out of the deal, right? And what happens, that happens when you don't know when to basically stop talking when you're talking to sellers. And I could tell you there's a very easy rule of thumb when to stop talking. Very simple. Anytime that you mention pricing in your negotiations, stop talking. So let's say I'm in a process of making offers back and forth, and I'm at offer 50,000. I shut up. I don't say a word. After price, whoever usually talks first is going to start losing, not lose, but start losing in that negotiations. Because think about this. Think about this way. This is why this is such a true concept. Let's say I offer 50,000, right? And now I shut up. I don't say anything. And you know what happens? That dead silence, uncomfortable. You're like, oh my God, hang me by by my hair. What can you possibly say? You can't say anything positive. When I say 50,000, I can't say at that point, well, no, how about 40,000? Well, that'd be crazy. It's like, I can't offer 50 and then go to 40, right? Here's the only thing I can possibly say at that point. Is anything related to trying to justify that price? And if you're justifying something, you're subconsciously telling that seller, you yourself don't even believe in it. Okay? So the point is, the reason you have to be quiet after making an offer or after talking any kind of pricing is there's nothing positive that could be said at that point. You never want to justify your pricing. You only justify when you renegotiate something, because then you have to give a reason of why you're renegotiating. But a front end, when I say 50, to me, it's like, well, of course 50. I mean, like, what are you thinking? Like, of course 50, right? So learn when to be quiet when negotiating and talking to sellers. I'll give you another tidbit. At what point, when you're talking to sellers, do you stop trying to get a lower price? Right? Because, I mean, the bottom line is, what's the point of negotiations? Try to get a lower price, try to get a lower price, try to get a lower price, try to get as low as you can. But there's times during that process where I know, well, cool, I can't get anything lower. So here's what you want to be remembering as it relates to that. When the seller says the same price 3 times, when the seller says the same price 3 times to me, I stop. So here's how it works. So we're negotiating, we're going back and forth, and the seller's like 90,000. I might say something like, well, how about 75,000? 90,000. How about 80,000? Vexelman, I said 90. There it is, 3 times. 90,000, 90,000, 90,000. So the rule of thumb, you always, I have learned to stop pushing pricing when the seller says the same price 3 times. And that happens during different parts. That could happen up front when you're basically, when the seller might be just coming down by himself to certain price. It might happen during the negotiations when you're going back and forth. It might happen during a renegotiation period, when you're trying to get price drops. But my rule of thumb is I stop negotiating, or I go to different negotiating strategy when the seller gives me the same price 3 times, because then I know they're at a mental, talking to sellers obviously is an art form, right? And it isn't emotional. We discussed that today over and over again. And sometimes it is okay to rile up your seller just so they can get a little emotionally cuckoo and make a wrong move. But you never want to get to the point where you're like really, really, really getting the seller mad at you. And I can promise you, and I've seen this happen, people browbeat, and browbeat, and that seller's like 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, and guess what? Then they're like, cut it off. Like, we're done. You're out. You ain't my buddy. We're finished. So at any point, at any kind of negotiation technique, strategy you're using, when the seller says 3 times the same price, you want to back off. So those are kind of some of the things I wanted to discuss with you guys today. Sellers, the ability to talk to sellers, the ability to negotiate, the ability to understand who your seller is, the ability to build relationship with the sellers. It is absolutely, positively a necessity, guys. And you have to, you got to do it, and, I'll tell you, one of the big overriding mistakes that I've seen people make is this. They just won't do it until they feel like they got it down pat. I don't know how many times I hear people say, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to talk to sellers. And I'm thinking, well, okay, so how are you going to get ready? And they're not. It's like saying, I want to play basketball. I want to get better at basketball. I'm just not ready to go on the court and play basketball. Okay, well, how are you going to get better at basketball? Well, I'm going to keep on thinking about it. And that ain't going to work. No one ever got better at anything that has to be done by thinking it through. The good news is there's unlimited amount of sellers, right? I mean, here in Atlanta where I'm at, within 50 miles, there's 8 million people around me. I guarantee you, wherever you're at, within 50 to 70 miles, there's tens and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So the good news is that you're not working with a finite inventory. You're working with an infinite inventory. So the quicker you get out there and literally start connecting with sellers, talking to sellers, negotiating with sellers, building relationships with sellers, following up with sellers, that's the ultimate best way to get better at this stuff. So start immediately. Don't put it off. Don't put it off. Start immediately. As a matter of fact, those of you that are partners, and some of you all dial in who are partners on these Tuesday night calls, and we appreciate it. We love it because we know we hopefully deliver some good content to you. It's one of the things you see us doing with you all the time. We're pushing our partners out. Let's go. Let's go talk to sellers. Go talk to sellers. Go talk to sellers. You can't screw it up. Only way you could screw it up is by not doing it. And remember, if you do like totally screw it up, just put them in a follow-up. Call them 3 weeks later. They won't even know who you are. Okay? No big deal. All right, guys. So that's all I got in terms of sellers. Remember, guys, you know why we do this. We do deals with individuals just like you all over the nation. And I want to have more partners because I got plenty of resources. I got capital. I got people. I got infrastructure. I want to do more deals. So if you want to be one of our partners across the United States, where we coach and mentor you, just like I did today, where we generate leads for you, where you use all my money to buy the properties, all my money to fix them, and then when we sell them, we split the profits, then you need to be part of our partner-driven coaching program, because that's exactly what we're doing with individuals all over the United States. So to be one of our partners, simply go to our website, guys, at www.coachingbypeter.com. That's www.coachingbypeter.com. There you'll see a lot more information about who we are, what we do, and how we do it. For those of you that might be like ready, like I'm ready to jump in today, you could actually even call me directly at area code 404-915-9685. But remember, guys, I think partnerships is the ultimate way to do it at my level. And I already got the experience, and I already got the money. So if you don't have the experience or you don't have the money, then the partnership's definitely the way to do it for you. So go to the website, fill it out. We'll touch base with you. Other than that, peace. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place. Thanks, guys.